what's up YouTube? Welcome to today's video. I know it's been a while. I think I've been gone for roughly like 5 to 6 days. Took a little bit of a mini vacation to Denver, Colorado. Kind of a fun trip, but while I was gone, Mayhem event did go on, and boy, oh boy, did I not expect to see so much backlash within the community about this event. It seemed like a lot of people were kind of angry about how Mayhem had some mods that were snuck in. Actually, I'm not really sure if they were snuck in, but we just go look at Path of Exile Mayhem. We see that even Zizarin, a bunch of other people, made a video about it saying putting modifiers on Mayhem was a mistake. And I do know that even Asmongold has something said that said, and this was reacting to a Subtractem video, players are logging out of Mayhem. Now, I did want to play the Mayhem event pretty much because I thought it was going to be the most chill event, and however, I was pretty much wrong. It actually ended up being a very not chill event. So this event kind of was like a mini gauntlet event. If you can see right here, this thing has monsters deal 40% extra physical damage as lightning, and monsters deal 20% extra physical damage as chaos. Now, having something that deals extra physical damage as chaos is incredibly scary. Pretty much because you don't have that much chaos res at all times. So if we look at it here, some of the mods that we have is monsters take 35% less damage, 40% increased monster damage, onslaught, additional projectiles. So it's pretty much like a mini gauntlet. And a lot of people aren't happy about that. But today's video is pretty much just going to go over the top builds that actually ended up winning the Mayhem event. So first off, there's kind of like 3 different categories for the Mayhem event, and there's softcore trade, hardcore SSF, and then SSF softcore. And I do think if you look at these 3 categories, you'll be able to find almost all of the builds that are used to win these events. However, there's also hardcore trade, but right now hardcore trade is pretty much a ghost town. I think Karn is actually trying to get number 1 overall in hardcore trade, because hardcore trade at this point is pretty much just hardcore SSF. Now, we're going to start off with softcore trade because softcore trade actually ended up getting level 100, I think in roughly 32 hours. So this is a screenshot from Havoc's stream, and he did stream the whole event in one stream. So level 1 to 100 in roughly less than a day and a half. Now, he did play Spark carry in a full team of support. So now for a lot of people who don't understand how group play actually work in softcore SSF, well, you'll be very disappointed to know that group play in softcore trade is one of the most degenerate things ever. You pretty much have to have 5 or 6 people in a full party. And the reason being is that the way damage scales in this game exponentially, so the more supports you have, the more the carry will do in terms of damage, and it allows you to get to content and do really, really juice content with very little gear. Now, the most important thing about it is you could also run XP gear, and this is experience gear. So you can see the Supreme Truth here has 3% experience gain. This thing has 3% experience gain, and then the helmet also has 5% increased experience gain. So you add it all up, it's really hard to beat some of these people, and some of the supports will even be running 2 Supreme Truths and also Paranda Signet, and this thing gives 2% increased experience gain. So back in the day, a lot of people used to play Flame Blast, and they would run the Chittis and 2 Supreme Truths, and these were actually pretty good for Flame Blast in the past because they had elemental damage, and then Supreme Truth also has elemental damage, and the implicit is also elemental damage. So you can see here, all of these people have the exact same name: Havoc Focus Godslayer, Brooks Focus Godslayer, and yada yada yada. So they're all playing a build that tries to benefit the main carry build, and Havoc chose the Spark build. Now, Spark and Blade Vortex are generally the most important ones that people use for carry. And you can see here they have a Cultist Curse bot, a Guardian, a Mana Guardian bot, or I think this might also be an Aura bot. And then here a Champion. I think a Champion is a Taunt bot or something like that. A Trickster, I don't really know what the Trickster does. It's pretty much just there for laughs and giggles. They don't even level up any gems. So the Trickster is pretty much just there to soak up some XP. And then you have an Elementalist, Ball Lightning. I think this could be like a Shock bot or something like that. Not really 100% sure if they're running the most efficient setup or whatever, but there's a lot of different supports out there. But you can see right there that softcore trade is a complete joke. And it's pretty much the main reason why SSF exists is because when you have events like this, You don't want people to be playing trade where there's people who can group up and do all sorts of shenanigans, because you can even have more people than just the 6 players. You can have 2 extra players trading for you. You can have 3 people rolling maps and selling items. And it just becomes a very like degenerate way of having any competitive event. And that's why it ends up being so fast. Now, XP gear in Giga Juice maps is pretty much unbeatable unless people get 5 ways, because Havoc completed this thing so fast in roughly less than 2 days. There was not going to be any supply of 5 ways. So that's why they probably leveled in whatever maps had Harbingers in it. And that's what I mainly saw from looking through the VOD, was that most people focus on doing Harbingers since they give a lot of XP. Now, next up, we have Mayhem SSF, and this is softcore SSF. Now, as I thought, Poison's Concoction Occultist completely dominated this event in terms of the top 2 builds being Poison's Concoction Occultist. Now, we also saw Bone Shatter with Juggernaut and Slayer performing super well due to its incredible mapping speed, which scales with density. And you will see that Poison's Concoction also scales really well with density because of Profane Bloom. The more mobs there are, the more likely a chain reaction will occur and everything on the screen will explode. Now, the most impressive build to me that actually ended up getting a demigod in the softcore SSF event was Tavano playing a Deadeye Kinetic Blast character. Now, you might be wondering, how can you actually play Kinetic Blast Deadeye? Now, the reason being is he actually got an Eshe's Mirror, which actually scales very well. And if you choose indoor maps and stuff like that, so you do like Toxic Sewers, you can actually get Kinetic Blast to have very good clear. Kinetic Blast with Shield Charge is probably one of the best clear abilities in the game. So if you look at his gear, he doesn't really have anything too crazy. This is just a T1 cold damage attack speed, 1, and then his helmet is actually Corrupted Life and some suppression. Eshe's Mirror, which is kind of lucky to get, not like too hard, but definitely a very important item for this build to take off. And then this is just a life multi. So his gear is not too good, so you can see he's definitely depending on, he's definitely depending on Eshe's Mirror for the damage and having a good layout map in order to clear maps as fast as possible. So it's very surprising that he actually got 100 with this build, and I'm very impressed overall. Now, softcore SSF was a little bit different in that more people would play the top builds purely because only the top 6 got the demigods. So when we look at hardcore SSF, we'll see that there's a lot more build diversity. So for hardcore SSF, the winner actually appeared to be a Trickster Cold Dot build. Now, SSF has more build diversity, like I said, because the demigods are for the top of each ascendancy, so people won't just play the best build, and they'll play the best build for that specific ascendancy. Now, I do think that one of the biggest differences is that Poison's Concoction Occultist was not that popular in hardcore SSF, and I do think that the build is probably not really tanky enough in a Mayhem event, but maybe the people that played it just died. A lot of times, like, you see these builds, you might think, oh, are these actually the best builds for this event? And a lot of times it is more likely that the best players are not playing the best builds. So, like, if you said I'm Exile or Ben, if they played any of these builds, they would probably be ranked 1 overall. And a lot of times, like, looking at the ladder from a very myopic perspective where you just look at the top builds and just consider it as the top build is not completely right, because sometimes people might die, unfortunately, or they just don't play as many hours as someone else. So do I think that Trickster Cold Dot is the best build overall? Probably not. I'm not too sure. I think Bone Shatter should probably beat it out. Not too sure. So it does seem like hardcore players do prefer Cold Dot a lot more. We didn't really see that much Cold Dot in softcore SSF, and it's probably because Cold Dot is a little bit slower than Poison's Concoction Occultist. And Cold Dot's really nice in hardcore pretty much because of the playstyle. You pretty much can just focus on moving throughout the map and trying to dodge the ground effects. Now, something interesting to note is that Seismic Trap is still extremely strong for both mapping and bossing, even after it got nerfed over 50 to 100 times. And Bone Shatter is pretty much just an amazing skill overall for these XP events, even though Bone Shatter is not super great at killing Uber bosses. In terms of a bossing event, Bone Shatter really shows that you don't need that much gear to get off the ground. So you see here, Garata is actually playing, a Juggernaut Bone Shatter, which is a lot tankier. You have that mini Transcendence going for you, and his weapon's actually not too bad, 742 PDPS. And basically, he has a bear's girdle, which is pretty surprising. A Hinakora's sight, which I'm assuming he's using for precise technique or something like that. Not really sure why he's using that. But you can see here, there's also the Slayer Bone Shatter. So Karn has a 677 PDPS, and this weapon is actually not too good at all. So it really shows you that you don't need that much gear for Bone Shatter to get off the ground, and you pretty much just destroy the map. And you can see here, there's also a couple people playing Detonate Dead. So these people are trying to take the Necromancer Ascendancy. And then you see here, someone's actually playing Deadeye Vol Lightning Strike. And there's even Raider Explosive Arrow, Berserker Shield Crush. So you can see here, this is the main example why people really wanted GGG to do a Demigod for every single Ascendancy, because that's how you can force some extra build diversity out. And that's why you look at Mayhem SSF, you have so many people playing the same builds with Occultist Poison's Concoction, because most people know that that's going to be the best build overall. Now, even though I didn't get to play this event, I do have some quick thoughts about the event. I'm not really sure why GGG added the mods to the event and turned it into a mini gauntlet. I think there's a huge thing about GGG nowadays where they're really trying to make the beginner experience as unpleasant as possible. And a lot of people showed me clips of people running through mud flats and getting owned completely by ghosts in the Brutus or whatever, or Hillock. And maybe it's kind of fun, but for a lot of people, I know it turned them off from an event, and they pretty much just all F4'd and never really even made it to level 50 to get the box. Now, in terms of the build for Mayhem, I do think that Cold Dot appears to be one of the best builds in hardcore SSF in terms of mapping, or it's because it's one of the builds that hasn't been played to death in hardcore. I know a lot of people play Seismic Trap, they play Detonate Dead, they play Helix and stuff like that. But I think Cold Dot has kind of flew under the radar and hasn't been as played as much. So when people want to find a build to try out in an XP race event like this, I think a lot of people kind of defaulted over towards Cold Dot. Now, as you may notice, in this event, in Hardcore SSF, we didn't really see anyone playing Spectral Helix. And that's pretty much because Spectral Helix sucks for mapping. And it's extremely, extremely slow. Now, we did leave out one of the categories, and that is Mayhem Hardcore. And you can see here, Mayhem Hardcore, no one is actually even level 100. I think Karn is about to get number 1 overall. So kind of interesting to see why there's even a Mayhem Hardcore ladder when it's pretty much SSF Hardcore. And it'll be a lot cooler if they pretty much just combine together. But let me know down in the comments below if you played the Mayhem event and if you enjoyed it and what build you ended up playing. But thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you find more Exalts, Divines, and Mirrors than me. And see you next time. Bye.